phone
I got it.
number.
It's on your card.
I'm usually not that sloppy in returning calls.
I didn't return your call because we booked an appointment.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I thought, well, we'll cover whatever we're going to talk about there then. It was fine. How long is Joe in town for? A couple days?
I think he's here till Friday. Joe's in
Okay.
here, so
Okay.
it's an introduction.
Okay,
Step
sure.
in.
All right.
Go ahead.
Sure. Hey, hi.
Joe
Scott.
Scott,
Scott,
how
great
you
to
doing?
meet you.
I'm Joe.
Well. Great to meet you.
Let me give you a card,
Thanks for
Scott.
coming in.
Yeah, my
Okay.
pleasure.
Yeah, good.
So I'll just pop in when they come in.
Sounds good.
There is some water. Would you like
Coffee?
Got one?
or Coke, Diet Coke?
Coffee would be great. Black, straight.
Coffee? Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Thanks. Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
How long are you in town for?
I leave Friday morning.
Okay. How often do you get up here?
Once every 3 weeks, I
Okay.
should be up here
Okay, good. And I'm guessing
for a couple days.
you grew up in Columbus, is that? Or-
Cleveland.
Cleveland, okay.
Close,
All
close.
right.
Only 2 hour difference.
Okay.
What was that sitcom for Cleveland with the woman with the
Drew
makeup?
Carey show?
Yeah, yeah. I love that show. That's funny.
Was it the Drew Carey show?
I like the fact that they did dance routines,
The what?
the singing and dance routines on the show.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
I just remember that character, the female one.
Yeah,
Mimi.
Mimi, yeah.
She was just.
Yeah, very quick wit. All right, so we set aside about an hour and a half, and we got lunch coming in. Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'll be
Okay.
back with it when I comes.
Okay.
Actually, I'm gonna need to leave at about 12:25.
Okay. Oh,
Got a interview with a candidate
good.
at 12:30, and
Okay.
This is a candidate that I pretty much identified that I want, so I wanna make sure I'm on time.
yeah, yeah. Well, we may finish early too. So.
I'm here for an
All
hour
right.
and 25 minutes, so.
Okay. Anyone else joining us? Is it Tisha? Okay.
No, Tish will just bring lunch.
Okay, all right. Do you want to start, Chris? and
Yeah,
kind of-
so I've talked to Joe a little bit about
Okay.
just some of the background in terms of wanting to have another pair of eyeballs coming on, how our process is going and whatnot. And this was initiated by Phil. So, and we had an initial conversation in here, and Andre, you were part of that conversation. Explained to Scott, and here's the lay of our overall sales landscape, and sort of narrowed in on direct sales in terms of, here's the team, here's their mission, and here's the approaches. And I couldn't really speak to detail to some of the processes you use, Joe, but I sort of at a high level talked about, this is what Joe is trying to track, and we had talked about the pipeline we're trying to manage and whatnot. So, in terms of in terms of I think so there's an opportunity for Scott to get to know you, Joe, and some of your processes. I think from there it'll be a matter of maybe Scott talking to the team, getting their read on things, as well as working with Andrea here for how are we, what's our process for looking at the pipeline and whatnot, and then coming up working with you and starting to talk about are there potential recommendations or things that we want to change or evolve. And I think this covers the gamut from not just the process necessarily, key metrics was an area we talked about, but also training aspects. Are there certain training aspects that we would want to institute that again would fall into Andrea's area for things we can educate the team on. I think we saw one last week with like how Bob Nitty responded to the customer when we were on the call with West.
Right.
There's an opportunity that I pointed out to Andrea after you dropped off in terms of, not responding with cues, but maybe responding with higher level information, to get the customer moving, give them a ballpark and move on so that everybody can move forward. So, you want to talk a little bit about your background?
Yeah, as we had our first meeting and Phil was also with us, we kind of talked about the sales process and kind of the sales philosophy and what are some of the things that you're measuring. And Chris shared kind of a higher level view of the sales channel, and there were a few questions where he said, "Yeah, I had to talk to Joe about that." So, and I just want to maybe start by just kind of getting a little bit background on your sales management philosophy or methodology, or how do you kind of
Sure.
overview a sales team?
And I think before you jump into the background for Scott was awesome. This is all new to us, so not new to you, but for Nonin in general, we haven't had a direct sales team. We had one, and then we moved away, and then we were moving back. So when we talk about historical influences or ingrained processes of Nonin, there really is nothing. Right? It's all been distributor management, and the tail wags the dog mostly on that one, which we're changing. And so some of the things you may typically look to see, we don't have. And then there's also and then with that, it's how much change do we want to institute at one time. So when we start talking about CRM, I know there's an interest in having. Phil's very interested in having a lot of details managed in CRM and whatnot, and I think CRM is a good tool, but how do we institute that change, and how do we bring it along, and how much do we try to put on the organization at one time, walk before you run sort of thing. So as we go into it, that's one thing I'm concerned about is, as we change things, are we sequencing it so that the organization can absorb it, as well as not creating pockets of differences that screw up our ability to look at things at the high level. So on Joe's team having like wildly different processes than the international team, that just there may be some need for that, but if it's if things become too different, then it's hard to look at things at the top level.
Right.
So you can't have one sales sales continuum or whatever. How do I go from stage to stage? And international can't have a completely different one, because then you can't roll it out, which is when we come into our pipeline or our funnel, as you call it. They have to be the same, with sort of the same broad definitions. And
Sure.
whatnot.
Sure.
So as Stott's doing his assessment, we want everybody to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, I think once that a CRM is released in the format that you approve, I think a lot of Phil's questions will be resolved, because salespeople will either utilize a CRM or they won't be around. It's really as simple as that. So the information will be put in to the CRM on a regular and continuous basis. And my understanding from my conversation months ago with Phil is that he's looking for information enterprise-wide, that's available enterprise-wide, and that is the nature of the CRM. So
He gets down to wanting every call logged.
I'm sorry?
Every call or interaction with the hospital logged.
They should be.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't really have a problem with that. If CRM had been available when I was a rep out there in the field, and iPads were available, and I could just leave my call, go sit down in the coffee shop, and I would have actually liked doing that. It wouldn't have been draconian. Where this concept of it's a draconian measure comes from, it typically comes from the people that aren't doing their job. It doesn't come from the people that are out doing their job every day, because they're doing this anyway. Good, successful salespeople are doing this anyway. So my point is, A, it's going to help us identify who is and who isn't doing their job, number one. I think we already have an idea of that anyway. Number two, it's going to give the organization the information. It's going to give them more information than they need. What the hell's Phil going to do with all this information? I mean, let's be real. But what it will do is it will engender conversations between me and my sales reps that are meaningful.
Right.
I mean, do I care what Phil does with that information? I got to be honest. No, I don't.
Yeah, I understand.
But the fact that he has it, though, makes me happy, because if he's happy, if Mama's not happy, nobody's happy.
But the reality is, right, as well, that they have a hard time sending their reports into you on a regular basis, and they have, they were reluctant to share their calendars as well too, right?
Yeah, and now what they've got is, instead of that, they've got a weekly phone call with me for an hour, and I will drill down, and then, do I like doing that? No. Do I need to do that right now? Yeah. Until they comply with the requirements. Now, it's difficult. Well, it's not difficult. I could do it. But I'm counting on the fact that we are going to have this CRM everybody's been talking about, because at that point, it will be non-negotiable. You will either comply with the requirements of documenting your activity in CRM, or you won't be here.
Right, so part of this is also an opportunity to define what we put in CRM and how we use
Exactly.
it. And that's also where, because I would really like the stuff that's the most important being put in there.
Mhm.
In the past, when we were first running CRM, it got a little chaotic in terms of what people were putting in there and how they were
Tracking
using
every
it.
email
And it got, unwieldy, and then even in team, people were using it different ways, and operationally there was one value criteria for it, and it really turned into a sort of a hodgepodge tool that didn't really provide any value for the organization, except for some people could use it for quoting or whatnot.
Sure.
And so then it was a lot of money lost, and that's where we don't want to go. So this is an opportunity to help define what we want, and I'm very concerned that requirements get driven by IT rather than requirements get driven by the business. And so I really want us to be, business driven in terms of these are the things we need to see, and this is the flow we need to see it, and making sure that this matches so that we can end to end, so that when we roll it out, this is how it is, that we know what it's going to be, we know what's expected from everybody, and we know how to roll it out.
Yeah.
And we know what we're measuring too, so that,
Mhm.
if I'm measuring something, and you're cool with it, and if you're measuring something, your team knows, and so everybody knows these are the metrics being tracked.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been my understanding that the CRM is pretty much developed. Now, if it's not, that's fine. But I've given a lot of feedback to Marcy relative to CRM and to Rick. They know I want it to be a tool that can be used. I don't want it to be basically a GPS where we track the reps. That's not what I'm looking for. I want it to be a tool that they can actually utilize. And I've given Rick and Marcy my feedback as to how best to accomplish that. They'll use it if it's a tool. You'd have to be nuts not to, if you want to make money. So if it's a tool, they'll use it. If it's a tracking mechanism, they're going to complain. And I don't blame them. It's got to be a valuable tool.
Right, and some of that, what you've seen on the west side too, is when you look at the sales motion continuum, you can see, as we started with the sales forecast pipeline, the different stages that your reps or our reps will have things in. That will be a tracking tool as an advantage for them, right? To see how many they have in assess, how many they have in learn, define, buy, and the value in each one. So it's not a GPS, more of a tool to push the sales forward. And that's how I'd like to see CRM used in portion too.
Well, yeah.
But when you give your requirements, that's, unmanaged requirements lead to chaos, and so I don't know how requirements are being managed, we need to do a pilot as well to smooth all this stuff out. It's like developing a product. If nobody watches the requirements as they go along, you don't get the product you want. Right.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. This is just one account yesterday with Rick Collada. This is the type of data, you don't really need to know what's here, but this is the type of data that needs to be in the CRM. It has to be. This is one call. So to ask somebody to document a call, it's valuable. I mean, people need to know this enterprise-wide in our organization for a lot of different reasons. It's not, and Rick needs to have a repository of information where, he's going to find the older he gets, the less he remembers. I used to think when I was 30, I didn't need to write stuff down, and I didn't need to, document. Well, now I do. And so everybody needs that repository of information for quick recall.
So what are some of the things that you took notes on or feel it should be? I'm just curious. Some of the stuff.
Well, there's the name of the account.
Okay.
There's the satellite facilities that are part of that account.
Okay,
There's the name of the director of biomed, there's the name of the director of purchasing.
okay,
There's, what monitors are they using?
Okay.
There's how many of those monitors?
okay,
You know, you should be able to put red flags in the CRM that, like, you know, remind me to get not only the monitors and